When I was 12, my dad passed away from cancer. And within months, my abusive mom got together with this new junky boyfriend who took everything from me. My name is Maggie Lewis, and Mrs. Homer Mom and her awful boyfriend's actions changed my life forever. So, I grew up in this small town in Florida. My earliest memories are of me with my dad in our house. He was like my rock, because my mom had always been troubled, I guess you could say. Dad was like the glue that held our family together. He knew how to handle my mom and keep me away from the worst parts of her. So when he passed away from cancer, it was like there was no one to keep the peace anymore. My mom, she, within a couple of months after my dad passed, she was a completely different person. Always had a bottle of booze in her hands. I don't know if she was really in grief or just needed an excuse to be high. And while she was busy with all that, she forgot she had a little girl that depended on her. You know, I needed her. Eventually, she met this other guy, John. John was this big guy. I remember just looking at him scared me. My mom started dating him, and he was just as bad and messy as she was. They spent all day getting high and drinking. Pretty soon, he moved in, and he brought his two sons, Caleb and Jax, along with him. And those two, they were like predators in training. Our house was never really in total peace, even when my dad was around. But after John and his sons moved in, it was like complete chaos. I'm talking piles of trash in the corners, the smell of beer and unwashed clothes everywhere. My mom and John couldn't care less about me, or anything for that matter. And that meant I had to take care of myself and the house, all on my own. At 12 years old, I was the one scrubbing the floors, trying to put together a meal from the stale leftovers they had in the fridge. I was the one trying to keep the men in the house happy, so they wouldn't start swinging. But it didn't matter what I did. Caleb and Jax, they looked at me like I was a toy. They'd bully me, they'd hurt me, put their hands wherever they wanted. I tried telling my mom, but she didn't care. She thought I was lying or looking for attention. It was like this for months. And the whole time, I just felt so alone. I remember just having this old picture of my dad and crying myself to sleep with it, just because I missed him so much. Then came the summer I turned 15. It was the 4th of July. John had spent all morning drinking on the porch with his boys. They had crates of those industrial-grade fireworks, the ones that are basically legal pipe bombs. I was inside, trying to clean up a mess Jax had made in the kitchen, when John shouted for me to get outside. He was in one of his moods. He's like, "Come on, Maggie, stop being such a bitch." Caleb and Jax were right there, egging him on. They started throwing small firecrackers at my feet, laughing as I slipped. I kept telling them to stop, that it wasn't funny, but that just made them go harder. Caleb's like, "You need to lighten up," and he just, grabbed my arm, holding me in place. John picked up one of those big fireworks they had lying in the boxes. And again, this was industry-grade stuff, and he was holding it up like a toy. He was so hammered he thought it would be a prank to aim it at me to scare me before he let it off. I saw him flick the lighter. I saw the spark hit the fuse. I tried to pull away from Caleb, but he was too strong. "Look at her face," Jack shouted. "She's gonna pee herself." John tried to aim it at my feet, but the firework didn't go off right. It exploded, but right before it did, John panicked and threw it at the first thing he could, right near my face. White light. That was the first thing. A light so bright it felt like it was burning through my eyelids. And the sound, it was like this high-pitched, scream-like ringing that filled up my entire skull. And then I felt this wave of fire wash over the left side of my face. I could smell sulfur and my own hair burning. My body just went into shock. I remember falling to the grass, clutching my face, and the world just went dark in my left eye. I remember the drive to the hospital. It was the only time I ever saw John look scared. Not because of what he'd done to me, but because he knew he was looking at a prison cell. My mom was in the passenger seat, sobbing hysterically. "It was an accident, Maggie," John told me while I was just trying to stay alive in the back. The boys were playing. You tripped. You fell on the firework. You say anything else, and I swear to God you'll never see your mama again. I couldn't even speak. Every breath felt like I was swallowing fire. When we got to the ER, it was chaos. Nurses running, doctors shouting. I remember being treated under those bright fluorescent lights. I could hear John in the background, doing his distraught dad act. They were just playing, Doc. The kids were being kids, and she just fell right on top of it. Please, you gotta help her. The pain finally hit then. It felt like someone was pressing a red-hot iron to my cheek. They put me under for the first surgery. They had to pick pieces of cardboard, plastic, and gunpowder out of my skin. They had to try and save what was left of my eye. I woke up 2 days later. My head was wrapped in so much gauze I felt like a mummy. My left side was numb, but it was a heavy, throbbing kind of numb. I was alone in the room when the doctor came in. She was an older woman. I think her name was Dr. Eris. I was panicking about not being able to see properly with my left eye, and she calmed me down. Then for a while, she just sat down on the edge of the bed and held my hand. Dr. Eris explained to me that the blast had damaged much of the left side of my face. I was lucky that it didn't significantly damage my eye. With treatment, I could still be able to see. But the rest of my face, it was never going to be the same again. She asked me how I was, how it all happened. But even before that, she asked me how life was like at home, if I was eating well, about my dad. And you know, just listening to her, talk to me like a human being, it just made me want to cry my eyes out. Like, I don't think I'd felt that way in such a long time. I told her about the abuse, the beer, the way John and the boys treated me. I told her about the prank. I told her how I'd been living in a house of monsters. The next few hours were a blur. CPS was there. So was the police. John saw the warning signs coming. He realized I wasn't going to stick to that little script he gave me in the car. So he tried to run. But they caught him and the boys at a motel 2 counties over. John was sentenced to 5 years. The boys were sent to a juvenile facility. My mom lost custody of me for good. I was taken to a foster home. And it wasn't perfect or anything, but, you know, I didn't spend every waking moment worried about someone coming up to me and hurting me. I managed to make it. I managed to survive. I left my mom and that whole house behind, but the damage they did to me, that'll never go away.